Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Cal Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and also on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from River Cities Media. Remember, you can go to their website to view a digital recording of this, or go to your local cable affiliate and find River Cities Media, as they're here for our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Carl. Good morning to our listeners.
Okay, well, let's get the painful part out of the way first. The mayor, like the rest of us, is still recovering from the heartbreak in Seattle.
That's right.
Prior to the game, the mayor accepted a friendly challenge from our friends in Bonnie Lake, Washington, and Bonnie Lake had offered Washington-themed items, including a wine basket, Starbucks coffee, Fisher scones, and a berry plant voucher from Spooner Farms. And in accepting it, Mayor Vruwink had offered fresh Dairy State cheese, craisins from Wisconsin Rapids' own Ocean Spray facility, Ruby Red's cranberry salsa, a product of Mariani Packing Company, which I love, by the way, cranberry juice, and Verso paper. Now, I guess this community in Washington is a short drive from Seattle. It's a city with a population of about 17,000 people, so comparable to here. So
yeah,
you got to pony up, Your Honor.
I got an email from the mayor, Mayor Neal. It wasn't 15 minutes after the end of the game. So it was
Are you crying?
My phone buzzed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. What a disappointment for all of us in Packer Nation. But I suppose, there's always next year.
What you could do, say, well, yeah, it took a Wisconsin quarterback.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. Yes. Oh, get that out of the way, right, Carl?
Yeah, well, hey, let's get...
The package will go off later today. In fact, I've got to pick up one more item from Ruby Reds yet on that. So
okay, how are they going to distribute it? Did he say? How are they?
He didn't say. No, he didn't indicate. I don't know if it's going to be an office party for he and his staff with Wisconsin goods, or what they'll do with it all. But
I hope they choke on the craisins
and maybe become customers of these products.
Well, that's okay. Good. That's true. That's true. Hopefully, they include business cards so that they can they can order. Exactly. If you enjoyed this, you can order some more. But let's get a rematch. I think the Packers play them during the regular season next year in Green Bay. So let's get a rematch. Let's get a rebet for you.
Right.
Okay. Last night was the Common Council meeting, and one of the big items had to do with the Incourage Community Foundation's Tribune Building project. And, of course, anybody who's been listening to the Morning Magazine knows we've had numerous updates on the Morning Magazine as well as on the Noon Report about this project. And last night was a developers agreement, and also in part because there's an opportunity. The Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, i.e. the Walker administration, has told the the folks at Incourage, you guys should be applying for a grant for this project. There's WEDC grants available for this. And I just remembered, I think it was in Hobart, up in northeastern Wisconsin. They just awarded some grant for a similar type project up there. So last night, there was a developers agreement and everything else, and so that they can go and try and get this grant, which it sounds like they got a very good opportunity of getting. So why don't you, I've given a little bit of the background, why don't you fill in the details?
Well, I'll share a little bit about the grant, because I think there were some questions raised as to, are they vying for city funds, public funds for the project, and the answer is no. What they're vying for on behalf of the city has to be the applicant, because the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, as you said, only lends or grants to local municipalities, whether it's a city or a county. So in this case, we have to be the grant applicant, in which we evaluated and we thought, what other projects do we have right now that we can apply for? And frankly, we didn't really have any other projects that were at a stage where we felt confident that we would have a strong application. So when Incourage approached the city after conversations with Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and our local contact here about that, their grant programs, she indicated, Nalita had indicated that it's a strong possibility that Incourage, through their project, would be a strong candidate for a $500,000 community development grant. So with the city as an applicant, we needed to show city participation. And we've all heard about the Tribune Building project to some extent. And one of the concerns or struggles they've got, and this is required of really any developer, is off-street parking. And recognizing that they really don't have ample parking for what they plan to reuse the building for, and our ordinance prescribes a certain amount of parking spaces per square foot in the building. So when they approached the city, we began discussing, okay, what would we do? How can we support the project, the redevelopment, and ultimately the investment that they're trying to receive outside of the grant, which is due next weekend, the 31st or the 30th, I believe. And so for us, we began discussion about a developer's agreement, and that was indicated by the state that a developer's agreement would be very beneficial to the cause and to their application. So that's why the city got involved. And again, it wasn't to contribute public funds necessarily, although that could have been a possibility. It just wasn't something that we thought was in our best interest. So we were asked to consider a sale of the Market Square parking lot. And that, for listeners, is the parking lot directly behind the Tribune building, between the Centralia Center and the street.
My office used to look out at that.
Sure, yeah. And, it fostered a good dialogue of what else can we do in this area beyond just remaining a parking lot. Are there other things that we would want to ask the developer, which is Incourage, to support in that area? And one of the ideas that surfaced was maybe realigning the street back as it were before it was moved for WOCO back in the day. Back to Centralia Center. What that would do is allow the same amount of space that exists in front of Centralia Center to exist next to the parking lot. So it gives you more development space. Unfortunately, that comes at about a $350,000 price tag. So we felt, well, maybe that wasn't necessarily a conversation we were willing to have or commit to today. So we somewhat abandoned the discussion about realigning the street for now. I think we tabled it for now. And began discussing, okay, what else would we improve in front of the Centralia Center if we were not to move the street? So we asked Incourage to contribute in lieu of an application to the state for the $500,000, and connected to the sale of the parking lot would be $150,000 to support construction of a civic feature. And a civic feature can really be anything. I mean, it could be a fountain that comes out of the ground that people could serve as a play feature. It could serve as some other features in front of the Centralia Center. So we're talking about the green space, the commons area that's in front. That really has very low use today. It looks nice. There's some trees that are dying. I just noticed the other day, that we might be able to put that space to higher and better use, particularly because as the Tribune building continues to redevelop, the activity that will be supported in that area. So we received $150,000 from Incourage to redevelop that space. Obviously, the expectation is that the city would also have some investment in that. They also contributed $50,000 in design fees to decide or to determine what can fit there and what makes the most sense in the space in front of Centralia. The other commitment we got was a longstanding concern I had about the development, and I think to Incourage's credit, they recognize that they want economic activity to exist in the building. That's the desire. That's really paramount to the project, and their planning is to foster economic development and economic activity. So one of the components in Wisconsin, how we finance ourselves, most of our listeners know this, is via property taxes. Well, if you're a nonprofit entity, oftentimes, depending on the use of the space, you become tax exempt. Well, if that's the case, you share that the burden is then further spread to other property taxpayers. Well, we have a downtown TIF, which was created back in 2005, 2006 to foster more development in the downtown TIF. And when you reduce the value of a building, you no longer have that tax increment to spend in other areas, or reinvest in other areas. So a conversation I had with our assessor was, if these activities were in the space, what's a number, what's a valuation of the building that is within reach? So it was agreed upon that the building would remain on the tax rolls at a value of $856,000 for the next 20 years. And at today's tax rate, that would enable about a $22,000 payment to the city in lieu of taxes. It will be a tax payment based on the valuation of the building to fund city services. So I appreciate Incourage's willingness, even as a nonprofit, to recognize that they are also a user of city services, right?
Well,
Police,
and
fire, road construction, street plowing, all of the sort.
And that the whole idea behind the development, and you've been at these meetings and the like, has been to encourage a dialogue about what's going to happen in the downtown.
That's
that
right.
This is just one aspect.
That's right.
And that this was going to be the seed or the spark that would start something. And when you look at what they're planning for the Tribune Building, you've got the Cultural Center nearby, you got the Centralia Center, you have what could be a creative block or arts block. And now with this arts grant that they got, which I understand, as they said last week on this program, it's tougher to get than getting into Harvard.
Interesting.
And this project is getting national recognition. So if
because of the investment.
Because of the investment.
The state investment is of importance. Some might say, well, what's $500,000 in a $7 or a $9 million project? Well, it isn't the $500,000 per se. It's the attraction or the attachment that the state is investing, right? As you said, how would you have known about a development in Hobart, Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Well, you know that because the state invested in it. So there is an attractiveness that investors and developers follow. What's the big development? The state investing is important.
Also, the Incourage Community Foundation, this project has been getting national recognition because of the public input.
Right.
Or the public participation in this, and the fact that it's using, there's an economic component, there's an arts component, there's it's a very unique and interesting thing. And as it goes forward, you might be hearing from other media in the country going, Mr. Mayor, how did you guys, because they've already covered the Centralia Center under your predecessor.
Right, exactly.
So they might be coming back, okay, how are you guys doing this again?
Yeah, how are you leveraging some of the past successes to foster future successes? And that's what's neat about the Tribune Building is outside of the resident engagement process, which I think is great in and of itself. There are commitments that we've secured through a developer's agreement through the sale of this parking lot that provided, at the end of the day, the parking lot is still a parking lot in the agreement. So if something were to happen to the contrary, the parking lot would revert to city ownership. And there's been some discussion about, if a parking structure were built or if these other things were to...
That was brought up last night.
...come into play, Incourage is more than willing to consider what alternatives might exist. And frankly, if it's in the community's best interest, it's an Incourage mission to do what's in the community's best interest for the long term. So we're very excited about that development for the sake of the investment they're able to attract and secure. We recognize that in a soft market like we live, we don't have developers clamoring to invest in our community. But to some degree, the amount of investment that we seek in ourselves by way of supporting partnerships and then supporting Incourage in their pursuit of investment, seeking investment, outside investment, is of great benefit to our community long term, because it's new money entering our community that will be spent in construction activities and operational activities that we get back in the business again to make sure that we're fostering new development in the community.
Yeah, I mean, because they're looking at and they want to have as many local contractors as possible, or at a minimum, Wisconsin contractors involved. And then the artists grant, they're getting proposals. They want local proposals. We got a PSA I have on this on the air that I recorded, seeking those. The deadline is fast approaching for that for the Art Place grant for the art for the
art features
of the building.
Yeah.
But let's say if you get some nationally renowned artist that comes here, well, they're going to be bringing their people. They got to stay somewhere. They got to eat.
It'll become a destination, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the building is very attractive for us in the sense that while some may I don't know, kind of cast off the resident engagement process. At the end of the day, if there's economic activity and it's a beautiful building and it's a destination for people here in our own community and outside, we've won. The community has won.
That's it. And hopefully will motivate people to get more involved in their community. How will this fit in with your long-range plan that you've identified for the development of the riverfront?
For us, it's been about taking past planning and dusting off those plans, getting them off the shelf, and to look to see what is most relevant today, right? Recognizing that plans sometimes, as time passes, things become less relevant or even feasible, right? I mean, there's a feasibility component of that as well. So we've taken a look at some of the past downtown plans, recognizing that there's a lot of property that's changed hands, and it will continue to change hands, whether it's the river block and divestment by Verso now in the coming months, as we expect them to do, or any other parcels that have changed hands, that we continue to foster a dialogue with Incourage or the Mead-Witter Foundation or any other community stakeholders, residents that ultimately have a voice as well, to understand what's next, right? We recognize the Tribune Building is going to continue to go through its process. They've let some of the general contract bids, so they're going to begin their process there. But we've got to also be working on other things, right? We can't just put our eggs in that basket. So we've pursued property acquisition in the downtown, and City Council has approved acquiring a couple of properties across from the courthouse. So we've begun that process, and we're going to continue that process because past planning has recognized that those development zones are prime for redevelopment. And most importantly, I think it's important to point out that one question of why the city might be doing this.
I've had questions like, why is the city buying these?
The reality is, Carl, that if the market were to take care of it itself, it would have done it already, right?
Yeah.
We've had decades of vacancy or lack of occupancy or disinvestment, and the reality is if the market was going to do it, they would have done it. They would have done it already. They wouldn't have been sitting on the market for sale for the last 10 years or 5 years or however long, depending on the building you're talking about. So it's really an opportune time for us as a city to break the cycle, to say we want to foster new development. And sometimes that requires the city to step out of its shell. And City Council, I'm very appreciative and pleased that they believe and agree in this vision. Thankfully, we've got some council members that were part of past planning, so they've got a little historical perspective, like Tom Rayome and Jim Stack and others, to say, you know what, you're right. We do need to do these things because not only does our tax base rely on it, but our economic future relies on it. That if we're going to do what we think we should and everything else that we've understood to attract and retain millennials, for example, to take the jobs that will become open today or into the future in our employers. They want to live downtown. They want to be close to city services. They want to be close to entertainment and any other amenities. Well, today our community doesn't offer much of that. So this will now foster an opportunity for that new development to occur that is going to match what our gap is, right? What are we lacking in competitiveness? And this is one such way, is our housing in the center of our city.
And so you're looking at these properties, like you mentioned, near the courthouse, to be developed into housing?
That's correct.
So have you had some
component of housing, component of retail, and then we've also heard from some local employers that their office space may not be a fit for them. It may be outdated. It may not be. They may not have everybody co-located. You've heard the courthouse. And
Lance Plemmel and I have talked about this.
Yeah. So it's really a golden opportunity for the city to lead the way to promote and foster redevelopment in and of itself, to partner with the county to say, as a county taxpayer myself, I'd much more like, and I think many county taxpayers would agree, that the county going out on its own, borrowing tens of millions of dollars to build a structure for themselves, is not fostering good economic development. So there may be an opportunity for them to play a role in this new redevelopment as a tenant in the space, and ultimately foster more economic activity, right? That's what it comes down to, is how do we get more transactions to occur, and where can it be done?
Okay, with the properties you've acquired, you've already gotten some developers or some folks saying...
Yeah, we've got a couple of developers that one we've reached out to, or some that have heard about the city. What's your plan for this? Ultimately, our first priority is site control. We want to get site control so we can repackage the parcels for redevelopment. We have not begun formally engaging with any specific developer about, depending on who that might be or what their ultimate goals are. We know, as we just shared, housing, office space, and retail space are all of major interest to the city. But we don't know who that developer might be, nor do we know qualifications. So the next step in this process, after site control is secured, is to begin an RFQ, a request for qualifications of developers, locally, regionally, nationally, that might be able to supply what they think the site can bear, and then ultimately how they'll finance the site. So it's an iterative process, right? Because you don't have, to some extent, there's a risk. There's always a risk in anything anybody does. And in this case, the risk for the city is, well, you buy the sites and you clean up the site, and gosh, you got a clean site for somebody. Well, there isn't much risk or downside in that.
Okay, my mind.
Please.
It goes wacko. I'm looking at, what's going on with the Tribune building and the development that might come out of that.
Yeah.
Some of the same companies who come into town to do that.
Yep.
May say, hold it, you got something going on the other side of the river too? Let's sit down and talk, Your Honor.
That's right. Right. Yep.
Let's.
What are your plans for this?
Yeah, because this sounds like this is happening downtown. There's something going on here.
Right.
I mean, all of a sudden, this could become a developer's entrepreneurial zone.
That's right. And that's where you start spreading around economic activity, right? An economic opportunity for residents, but for contractors. Local contractors have long said, we're doing all this work in all these other communities and projects.
Why aren't we doing it here?
That's right.
Okay.
And there's definitely a correlation to public investment, like we're doing with the acquisition.
We saw it in Plover.
Right. And what happens as a result? Private investment follows public investment. Because, heck, if we're not investing in ourselves, why would we expect anybody else to invest here?
Yeah, people that say, I believe in free enterprise and blah, blah. Businesses don't go to places that don't have the infrastructure or the amenities or the quality of life that they expect.
That's right.
They want a pleasant, if I'm going to be investing in a new office space and I'm going to try and attract employees, I want something that's going to look good. I want it to be in a location that's going to look good.
That's right. That's right. And they have a place to go after work.
Right. So if after work, hey, we're going to have a social get together as a group, and we're just going to get to know each other. And let's go out for a bite to eat, or let's go out to lunch and have a luncheon meeting somewhere.
Because if our residents are spending their time or their money in communities, maybe in the Fox Valley or north or even south of the city, companies are going to continue to locate in those places or grow there, right? I mean, we're not just saying new companies just flocking to the community. It's even existing companies that might be saying, we're at a growth crossroads. Do we continue to expand in this community, or do we choose another community where, in fact, our employees are going anyway or spending their time? So, we've hammered this about competitiveness, but it's the absolute truth that to what extent we are paying attention and actually doing something about it is obviously going to be critical to our success. Obviously, a lot of this will be coming up in future Common Council meetings and reports, and so let's get it out there. The public is going to know what's going on. It's going to be a very transparent process for people. Yeah, and for people that may have questions, particularly around the property acquisition, call me. I mean, I'm more than happy to let's not spread rumors, because I've heard all sorts of interesting ones. Yeah, a Justice Center, I mean, that's obviously been floated by the county, not to say that it's completely off the table, but the reality is there's been indication we don't need the Justice Center. We don't need some of these things. So, what's the other things, what's feasible, what do we need, and what can the market bear? I mean, there's obviously a reality check. I'm not living in kind of la-la land thinking that we're going to, attract this beautiful structure and all this development. There is some realistic components, but there's also opportunity that isn't being tapped, and that's my role. That's my job to say, okay, here's the opportunity, and then find the folks that are going to see that opportunity and see that vision. Okay.
You have your opportunity to talk to the mayor this morning at 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. We're going to take our first break, and then we'll be hopefully joined by a special guest as the mayor's annual State of the City address is fast approaching. We'll give you the details about that. You're listening to The Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com, and we also welcome our friends this morning from River Cities Media, who are digitally recording our session. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.
Good morning and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Cal Hilke.
Thanks again, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from River Cities Media. It's your time to call in, 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. We do have a caller waiting on the line, Your Honor. So you're on the air with Mayor Vruwink. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor.
Yes, good morning.
I got a question for you about our beautiful downtown Wisconsin Rapids riverbanks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very nice area, nice green grass and everything. What's your views on why we can't take a leashed pet and walk along and enjoy the beautiful banks and that, but yet we've got ducks and geese taking over the area, but there's signs up that we cannot take a nice walk with a pet or enjoy that beauty with,
Our furry friends.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question.
It's a great question. In fact, we've gotten ourselves in a little bit of a conundrum at times because there's been some enforcement that's occurred. You've noticed the signs and you probably heeded the warnings, or as others. I have family members. My sister has a dog, and so she takes
I have
the
a dog, too. I'd love to take Lucy for a little walk.
On the trail frequently, and I think that's something that we do need to explore. There is some contradictory pieces as it relates to how we police pets in parks and then pets on our rec trails. And I think what happened, on the record here, saying that's exactly what happened, but my understanding is when we've indicated that we cannot allow pets in parks, the pets on the trails has also followed suit because of the ruling with the park. So I'm going to take a note of that because that's something that I've gotten calls from residents that have gotten actually some contact via the police department as to not allowing their animals to be with them on the trail. I think it should be allowed personally.
Yeah, especially if you're responsible. You got the
they're leashed.
Yeah, if they're leashed and you clean up after them.
That's right.
I think that's the big issue.
Yep.
What's your thoughts about it?
Mayor, what I was also wondering is, I'm not just talking about the walking trail. I mean, the nice parks, throw a blanket out, be able to have a picnic lunch, have our dog on a leash, have our girl by our side. What's wrong with that?
No, and I don't see there's any trouble with it. I think what happened was why the ordinance maybe was created was around the cleanup. Right?
The cleanup issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few bad apples make it bad for all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but then with the geese and the ducks,
Yeah, that's kind of like, okay, who's going to enforce them?
Right. And what's worse probably is...
So is there any way that that could be put on the fast lane so this spring a lot of us could start enjoying that beautiful river frontage?
I'll see to it that it makes it on the Park and Rec Commission. In fact, we're meeting next Wednesday evening, and I'm not sure if that agenda has been published. If it hasn't, there might be an opportunity to get it yet on January's agenda. If not, we can get it in February.
Well, thank you very much.
And then I would suggest when that comes up on the Park and Rec Commission's agenda, you and anybody else show up at that meeting and voice your concerns and your support for the change.
Absolutely. Please.
Well, there's a lot of us that would support that. And
tell them to show up at the meeting.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you for the call.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, hey, see, that's how it can happen. That's how legislation can happen. You got a group of people who are saying, hey, this is a stupid law. Yep. Can we change it, please? This is how you go about doing it.
And to some extent, I think it comes as a surprise that you can't do it today.
I know, because in most communities, all it says is clean up after you. It's you could be fined if you don't clean up, but it's no prohibition against it.
That's correct.
Okay, before I get to our special guest, Gloria Kubitschek from the League of Women Voters, wanted to talk about Verso.
Yes.
You talked about this. What have they told you? What kind of conversations have you had? What are they going to be doing with the downtown office buildings? What are you hearing?
Well, as I wrote in my last community update, we've begun to reach out to them. Obviously, they were precluded from having real formal discussions related to the operations here because of federal antitrust. But now that they are indeed the owner of the Rapids operations and others, we have reached out to understand their plans, right? What are their future plans? What's their capital investment going to be? Recognizing that as the sale was first announced, a lot of the investment was put on hold until the sale transaction concluded. And as of last week, they had a very large integration team in town for the last week to look at the mills and to discuss what are their plans. So we wanted to give them space, wanted to give them the time to begin their initial review of the mills and the plants here in operations, and we expect to hear from them as to what things they decide to share in the near future. As it relates to other real estate, it has become clear that by interested parties that it's likely that they'll divest of the Riverblock property. It has not been done. I know there's been rumors swirling that has been sold. It hasn't been sold. Verso still has been sold to Verso, but it has not been sold to any other party. So I'd imagine that those transactions would occur this spring.
It'd be nice if it was a nice, profitable business that could use an office and with a number of employees
That's what I've shared with all the interested parties that I've spoken with in acquiring that is, to the extent that we're able to return employment to our existing structures, our standing structures that don't require a year of construction and don't require millions of dollars in redevelopment, that's our low-hanging fruit. I mean, that is our first opportunity to get employment back in the river block. It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to the paper industry, but if it is, great. But there are many call centers, many prospects around the country that are looking for freestanding structures, in which we all know that thing was built not that long ago and is in great shape yet, barring minor probably updates, to again house employment for our community.
And believe it or not, it won architectural awards.
Oh, is
when
that
it was
right?
built.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it won architectural, because I remember Consolidated celebrating that aspect.
Interesting.
For me, it always looked like a large airport terminal.
Birdhouse, I've heard birdhouse are a lot of things.
But hey, if we could get business in there or businesses in there and get people working in that building and shopping and eating in the downtown, and then with the other stuff going with the Tribune building and the other, we could start seeing a renaissance. These kind of things sometimes take up their own speed or catch speed faster than what we realize.
That's right.
Once the word gets out.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we got Gloria Kubitschek here from the League of Women Voters, and on Wednesday, February 4th, you're going to give your third annual State of the City address. And Gloria, I know the League of Women Voters has partnered with the administration on this. So why do you folks think this is such an important event?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, your honorable mayor and Carl, for inviting us or inviting me to represent the League. This is just a super opportunity for people to engage directly with our mayor, because before the State of the City address, we will have the informal reception. We'll also follow the address with a question and answer period. And during that informal reception at 6:30 before the 7 o'clock address, there will be department heads there as well, and all through the address. So this is the opportunity for citizens to be actively engaged in their government. And there is nothing more important, as far as we are concerned, as League of Women Voters. That's what we are proponents of more than anything else. Be knowledgeable, find out what's going on, be on top of things, take an active role in your government. That's what makes communities strong. Mm-hmm. And we have this opportunity to strengthen our community by being actively involved. And February 4th is the day we're going to be at Macmillan Library. This is your third annual.
Right.
And I know our mayor intends to talk about his vision for the future as well as much of all the progress that has been made in these last years. So I guess maybe I'll turn it over to you for a little bit of that.
Yeah, so folks, prior to your speech, will be able to meet with members of city government and
That's correct.
various department heads.
Yeah, we made really an initiative last year to get city department heads out of City Hall, right, out of their offices. It's an opportunity to catch them in an informal event, to maybe initiate a contact if people have a concern in the city, or to get their contact information. And it can be as simple as that it gives residents the opportunity to connect with those of which are directly involved in making change within the city. And I think it was a success last year. You know, people really took upon themselves the opportunity to connect with department heads and give feedback, right? It's all about feedback,
right.
Because if you don't provide feedback, things aren't going to get any better, or change for that matter. Very pleased that residents took that opportunity last year, and that again is going to exist during the reception prior. So not only to meet with myself, but also to talk with city department heads in various departments.
Okay, so again, this is happening at the Macmillan Memorial Library here in Wisconsin Rapids. For those of you unfamiliar, it's right across from Hotel Mead on East Grand Avenue. It's Wednesday, February 4th. The reception is at 6:30. And then the mayor's State of the City address is at 7, and then afterwards, after you give your formal presentation, you will be answering questions from the audience. I
Correct.
would imagine, Gloria, it will be a similar process to what you've done with forums.
Yes, very similar.
Okay, so
Yes.
there'll
Someone
be a
will be
league members will collect a card.
Right.
So you write down your question, you give it to a league member, and then they ask someone from the league, ask the mayor, you have a question about this.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what we've done in the past,
Okay.
and it's worked very well.
Okay, want to tease us? I mean, the president did a lot of teasing over
right.
before.
Yeah.
The governor did his own teasing. So you want to tease us about topic areas that you're going to be covering?
Well, as Gloria alluded to, talking about what's the vision we introduced last year, and what are the elements of that vision that have come to fruition, or what's the progress, right? Where are we at in some of the things we said we were going to do?
That's what public like, because we'll hear politicians say, I plan on doing this, and then we never hear anything.
Yeah, what's the scorecard, right?
Right.
In a very transparent way to talk about what we've accomplished. And if we didn't quite get to the level of success we wanted to, well, what are we going to do about that? The other elements is to introduce the vision of the upcoming year, and the elements of that, I think from a teaser standpoint, we all can expect some things related to modernization. We've talked a lot about how is city government becoming more efficient, and how are we becoming more responsive to citizen requests and contact. So we've got something to announce in that regard. We're excited about. In fact, that announcement may come before the State of the City, because of the fact that we do want to give people some reason to attend, but also give them a little bit of teaser in advance as well.
Okay.
So that may come as soon as next week in that regard. But very much around what are the successes we've had related to citizen engagement and citizen participation. As Gloria said, when citizens participate, that's what makes our city stronger. And to what extent my office is creating more opportunities for residents to get involved in that change and to make ourselves to create a better future for our community.
Okay, well, since you brought that up, I'd be interested in your take on both of them. At the celebration of when they unveiled the vision that the people had come up with for the Tribune building, one of the things, and Gus Mancuso stressed it that night, and he stressed it last week on this program, was the need for continued engagement. And a lot of people are wondering, hey, I want to get involved. I want to do stuff. And I mentioned to them last week on this program, mayors going way back, council members going way back have said, boy, it'd be nice if we could get more public participation. We hold a hearing on something and we think it's going to be a blockbuster and 2 people show up.
2 people or 10 even if you're successful.
So how do we follow up from the city standpoint? We've heard from the Incourage from their standpoint, but from the city standpoint, I'm interested in your 2 views on this. How do we follow up on that? You've gotten people, over 700 people, who got out of their comfort zones and sat down at a table with their neighbors and probably strangers who hopefully have become friends, as I've said, and they've been involved in a process. And now they're thinking, I want to continue this. Mm-hmm. What can we do as the city, league, to foster that continued involvement?
Sure. Gloria, you want to take it?
Well, I'd be happy to take that.
Okay.
Very honestly, I would like to compliment our administration because I think our honorable mayor has done that continually throughout his administration. At least I have witnessed him reaching out to the public, going out there and visiting, being in the schools, being at community events, a visibility. Now, that does not mean former mayors haven't done that, because I know they have. I've seen them as well. And that is a very, very important element. That visibility element is probably, the more people know who you are, recognize you, and feel comfortable enough to be able to approach you, whether or not you are a mayor, whether or not you are any one of the city department heads. I think that's so important. Alderperson. Well, there you have it. I mean, these are the people that, we see consistently in our neighborhoods, down at the grocery store, possibly in our own churches. And that is so very important, and that's where it's at. I mean, all politics are local. Mm-hmm. There isn't any doubt about it. And if you were just, Carl, having been last night at the council meeting, I mean, there was standing room only. That many people were engaged in all of the various issues that were being discussed last night. It was wonderful to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And look at the kind of participation we've not only had in the Tribune building that you talked about, but also with all of the changes that have gone on with Riverview Hospital and Aspirus. I mean, from the very first council subcommittee meeting about that, when they first discussed that possibility, I mean, people have really been engaged. Mm-hmm. And if there is anything to be proud about in this community, I think that is what it is. Because truly, I think it's happening here. I've lived in other communities before, even though I was born and raised here. And you don't see that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has been exceptional this year as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Your Honor, from your standpoint, how do you build on this?
I can share a little bit about the strategy. And we've got RCCA Media here, and that's such a great element for us, an opportunity to connect with residents. As we recognize traditional media continues to decline or change or evolve, we need to be everywhere where residents are, right? And if that means being online and Facebook and using other social media means, or being on our public access TV or on your radio show, or allowing a residents the opportunity to come and sit down and have coffee with me, which I would mention, which is next Tuesday at From the Ground Up, from 8:30 till 9:30 in the morning. But those are really extensions of me being in my office, and I think that's critical for residents to be offered those opportunities, because where residents are, where they're most convenient, to have interactions with me is really important to me, and I want to make sure that whether it's a State of the City address and people have an opportunity to ask a question there, call in on the radio show, that residents are provided multiple opportunities regardless of their connectedness, right, to me.
And if people have, for instance, if all of a sudden, if you're someone out there that's been involved with the Tribune Building project and that has led to your interest in downtown development or overall the strategy for downtown, or maybe you're thinking, hey, I want to be a decision maker in that, and I'd like to run for public office. Yes. I know the Incourage Community Foundation and League of Women Voters get together for how to run for public office.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I mean, attend one of those sessions, learn how to run for public office, and put your name out there.
That's right.
I mean, we also are a community that has the Speak Your Piece initiative, which basically says everybody gets a chance to speak, and nobody insults the other one, and nobody does. We encourage involvement from all sorts of different viewpoints, and so I guess that's and like I told the gentleman, if you and your fellow dog walkers are saying enough's enough with this, my dog can't be in the park, and when the geese and the ducks are pooping all over the place.
Right. Yep.
Hey, when that's up on the Park and Rec Commission agenda. Mm-hmm. Show up.
That's right.
So that you folks on the commission can hear these folks.
That's correct. And, my role, chief amongst all of the roles I and the hats I wear, is to help our community realize its potential. And the only way to do that is by residents that show up, that share their perspective and support elected officials in helping achieve that vision. So that's why it's very important to attend a city council meeting or to attend a committee meeting, which is,
I think committee meetings are the cue.
where all the heavy lifting
Yes.
gets
Yeah.
done, and to pay attention. Now, I recognize that our city must do a better job of communicating those things on much more relevant means and media today, which is Facebook and other things, and we're doing a better job of that. It's not where we'd like to see it, but that's where resident engagement participation hits the road.
Okay, speaking, since you mentioned it and it came into my mind before I forget it, you've been working on upgrading City Hall and the internet presence of the city so that, for instance, business people who need a permit for something have a one-stop 24/7 place because business is 24/7 now. We all know that. And they don't want to have, oh, geez, I can't make it to City Hall to get a permit right now.
But I need to start the work tomorrow.
Right. So could you give us a little update on that
That's
effort?
a teaser for the state of the city. We definitely,
okay. I tried, Jesse.
we definitely have an update on that at the state of the city, because we recognize that it's a big vision and it requires a long-term strategy. But we're going to have some success to report at that stage. So you raise a very valid point, and I'm glad that you raised it, because it's something we've been very close to at City Hall and very concerned about.
Yeah, and it's something I hear about on the street.
The hailstorm was a prime example of if we don't get prepared and offer more efficient ways to do things, we're going to be overwhelmed when situations like that happen, and we can't be.
Okay, so that will be a topic of how
Yes.
technology is being upgraded in the City Hall and how we're addressing that concern.
That's correct.
Okay. And now the coffee is with the mayor again, Tuesday, January 27th, since you mentioned it, at From the Ground Up Coffee House. That's at 250 West Grand Avenue, right in the heart of the downtown. And it's going on from 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning. And basically, how do you like to operate these things?
Essentially, I'm there, and residents grab a cup of coffee, or if they are still looking for breakfast at that point, they
can have a bite to eat?
Yeah, they grab a bite to eat, and we just sit down and have a casual conversation. There isn't really an agenda on my behalf. Residents sometimes stay for 5 minutes and get their concern addressed or share their feedback, as the caller did with me this morning, and then they go on their merry way, or they may attend the entire time. So they're very flexible, very casual, just providing residents the opportunity to come down and to chat with me on a particular issue that affects the city.
Okay. And then again, the state of the city is a big event. Is the league hoping that this is something that is a new tradition, regardless of administration, that
Yes.
following administrations will feel obligated to do similarly a state of the city address to the citizenry and allow the people to talk to that administration?
Absolutely, Carl. That's you are right on with that. And it is something that we had instituted about 3 years ago. It was a brand new project that we had taken on. And it has continued, we feel, very successfully, and we definitely intend to continue it into infinity.
Okay. Okay. So again, and this is your opportunity to meet with City Hall, literally City Hall.
Yes.
On Wednesday, February 4th, the reception, it's at McMillan Memorial Library here in Wisconsin Rapids. 6:30 is the reception time. You can talk with various department heads or folks within
Or your neighbors.
Or your neighbors, sure. Yeah.
Grab your neighbor and say, hey, let's go down and listen to this and understand what the city has planned for itself.
Yes, let's stop this rumor mongering and let's talk about what's really going on here. As I mentioned, I'm glad we had our discussion about these acquisition of properties. You and I talked about the various rumors that have been. Once it happens, everybody starts filling rumors, and then naysayers start saying, "Well, that's not going to work." Well, you don't know what's going on because you don't know what you're talking about.
You haven't asked the source, right? We always ask, go directly to the source when you do something. Yeah, definitely.
Right, and I usually go when someone calls me or asks me in person about something like that. I go, "Where did you hear this?" Oh, somebody.
Yeah.
Well, who's somebody? And it's just like this. So it's your opportunity. This is your city. So Wednesday, February 4th, at the McMillan Library, 6:30 is the reception time. The mayor's remarks at 7, and then after that, you'll have a chance to write down on a card, "Hey, Your Honor, what about this?" If you didn't hear something addressed or maybe follow up on what you just heard.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay. What's been the public's response to the league from this?
Oh, I think excellent, Carl. There is no doubt about that. People have talked about it with us a great deal afterwards, beforehand. And as I said, that engagement in community life just makes us that much stronger. And that is just so very important for the progress of the city. And at the same time, I do want to mention, if you cannot be there in person, which would be too bad, but that does happen, thanks to our CCA, it will be broadcast live, and they will, right after that, they'll be running it several different times.
I will
recorded.
be here. I will be recording it. We haven't developed our plans yet, but I will be here in this recording it, and we'll have stories that following morning on it. But we're also going to figure out some way to air either the entirety of the program or a portion of it somehow or other, and we haven't worked on it. Let's put it. That's on that's my to-do list.
That's terrific. Thank you, Carl.
Appreciate that.
And so, I mean, it will be a busy evening. I'll be back here manning a recording station, as it were. Okay, well, I guess we got a busy few weeks coming up. And again, Mayor, why don't you give your phone number if folks want to call you directly about anything they heard this morning?
Not at my desk, so don't call right now unless you want to leave a voicemail. 421-8202, or if you do want to speak to somebody, Nick, my assistant, 421-8216. Mine is 8202. He is 8216.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to wrap up this session with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink here on the Morning Magazine. We thank you, Your Honor. We thank you, Gloria Kubishak from the League of Women Voters for being here as well. And we thank our caller who called in. I wish we would have had more calls, but I guess...
We talked a lot, Carl.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, we got a lot of information out there, but you both have a great rest of the week and a great weekend.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Magazine.